What's happening, everyone? I'm back from vacation. This is the Fanatics View Hockey Show, and as you can see, we have a returning guest on the program, Stephen Ellis of Daily Faceoff. We're going to talk all things Toronto Maple Leafs, not a better guy to ask, and someone that I actually got to hang out with a little bit at the NHL draft. I can confirm Stephen is real. He's not AI generated. Stephen, how's it going, man?
I'm doing good. I'm jealous of you haven't been on vacation. Mine hasn't started yet, so counting down the days.
Where are you going on vacation? Anywhere planned yet, or just staycation, or what are you getting up to? It's a nice time of year out in Ontario.
Yeah, just going to a cottage for a week, and then it's back to the grind in time for training camp and everything like that.
Yeah, that's like the Ontario thing. I used to live in Toronto, and like everyone would have, if you knew someone with a cottage, you had it made. If you knew someone, especially up in Muskoka, you had it made. We went up to the Okanagan. We got a travel trailer, so it was nice to just like go up in the Okanagan, take some time. I played a little golf. It was beautiful. But anyways, we're here to talk about the Leafs. It's funny that we like I was like, I'm trying to do every Canadian team and kind of talk about the offseason, and obviously had to get you on to talk the Leafs. But this news broke obviously the other day and I think we should start there first, about Auston Matthews becoming captain of the Leafs. Is it today it's going to be official? I was trying to remember. My understanding is, and you let me know if I'm wrong about this, the plan was to make Matthews captain a couple seasons ago, but then he had that whole incident with the law, and so they kept it as Tavares. But just your thoughts on Matthews being captain, and was this a surprise that it's happening now, or what's sort of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so they announced it about an hour ago at Real Sports in Toronto, and it was a big public event. A lot of people there, full in that building. I wasn't there, but one of the guys I work with, Matt Larkin, was just explaining.
I met Matt at the draft. Yeah,
yes, you did. Yeah, Matt. He was explaining kind of everything that was going on there, and it seemed like a cool event. In terms of, I think if captaincy, I think the average fan overvalues it way too much because they don't see the actual value that a captain brings to a team, because that's what his line mates, that is what his teammates will feel in the room. So, people getting mad or having a big opinion either way, I don't know, feels wrong to me. But when it comes to him, he's the public face of the team. He's, the biggest star they've probably ever had on this team. So to have him be, the captain, I think the timing was definitely strange because there's one more year left of Tavares on his contract. But it does seem like a nice changing of the guard where if Tavares is traded, if Tavares does leave via free agency, which I don't think is going to happen. He wanted to be a Leaf his whole life. At least this way they had this moment where they could share it and say, you know what, here's the natural passing of the guard. So, good move, I guess.
Yeah, I like the move. If they're not going to trade one of the big three, which kind of looks that way right now. I mean, the rumors were that Mitch Marner was going to get dealt, and obviously there's been no talk of that I know of, at least recently. And then they bring in Chris Tanev. Like, I wonder if this is sort of a change in culture where we're going to make Matthews the captain. Obviously, Tanev brings his leadership experience as well. You've even got a guy like OEL who's got a bit, is a bit of a veteran now, just won a Stanley Cup. Like, I wonder if that's like kind of a subtle way of telling fans, like, hey, we're trying something a little bit different here. They have a new goaltender. Like, there's different things that are going to be with this team this year. And that kind of leads me to my point. What did you, and sort of the point of this as well, and we even left this, we have a poll question up today if anyone's watching this. How do you think the Leafs will do this season? How would you grade their offseason? Because I love the Tanev move. I know people are like, he's not going to do the 6 years, but that's what LTIR is for. Look at Vegas. But I think it's a good step in the right direction for the Leafs in terms of getting some more experience for those moments in the playoffs where maybe there isn't that experience there, and they kind of freeze and don't know what to do, because it's the same old story every year. But Tanev's a winner. I mean, I know so because obviously he's been with the Canucks, was with the Canucks for a while.
Yeah, with Tanev, it's funny because that's the guy that every team was targeting at the trade deadline, because you need those big guys who can block shots and get in the way of everything. I'm definitely concerned about that contract. The 6 years is a long time. No way he finishes it, but also kind of highlights how kind of silly the LTIR stuff is anyways, that you could, like, we're going to be having a different CBA by the time that contract's done. So who knows what they do with LTIR rules, but that right now, the way it looks, it's like, okay, so they're going to kind of try to circumvent it to get a couple of good years out of him, but those good years should be good. I think the one thing to keep in mind with him last year is I don't know if I've ever seen a player leave for the change room to nurse an injury more often than he does, but then he keeps coming back on the ice because this guy just blocks so many shots. My concern is when you've got that rough and tumble style, is that going to be an issue later on? We did see that with Mark Giordano. Well, his body really just started to fail him last year. He couldn't go out there and block shots. He couldn't go out there and throw hits, and he got injured a couple of times from plays that just didn't seem like he should get injured from. So there's some concerns there, but it fills a big need that this team needs, which is a big, strong defenseman that is difficult to play against, and that's perfect in the playoffs. Boston Bruins have had guys like that. We know how hard it is for Toronto to go out there and beat Boston. Going out and getting OEL fresh off that Stanley Cup run, And it was a big year for him personally because he really wanted to prove that he could go out there and be a serious contender again after years of just kind of seeing his play decline. But he actually his role was a little bit more muted in Florida than it was in Vancouver and Arizona, but he played really well, and that was kind of the thing there. So having those two guys being the big additions are good, and then Anthony Stolarz in net, I'm interested to see if that's really the answer, because that's a guy that's been a backup his whole career. You still don't have a true number one goalie. You're hoping it's between a backup who, to be fair, played very good last year, or Joseph Woll, a guy who has not had a healthy season in his pro career. Definitely some question marks in net, in that to me, I'm still not in love with it. But we've also know that you don't want to spend a lot of money on goaltending. They haven't spent a lot of money on goaltending, and they have two guys that when they're hot, they get hot. So I'd say it's been a pretty solid, maybe not a super spectacular offseason, but it addressed needs that the team desperately needed to do.
I would grade their offseason as being like a B plus around there. I do, like I said, I really like the Tanev move. As a Canucks fan, I'm very jealous we could not find a way to bring him back, because like Quinn Hughes, I mean, the story here is from the media that they've said is that, Quinn Hughes was like basically texting Patrick Allvin and being like, can you find a way to get him? Like they tried to get him at the deadline. They tried to, because he was basically a big reason that Hughes has sort of filled into how he has. Tanev was like a father to him. He sort of talks about this. And I think, again, bringing that, like, you're not just getting Tanev the player, you're getting Tanev the leadership, Tanev the locker room guy, and I think that stuff is so important. The goaltending thing's interesting. Like, I feel like the Leafs have been doing this thing the last, I don't know how many years of we hope this works out. Like, they really haven't, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I've obviously followed the Leafs for a while, but I feel like the Leafs have not had a good goaltender since Belfour. Like someone that remember back in the 90s, early 2000s, you had a goaltender that would steal games for them. I feel like goaltending has been such an issue for them since then. Am I wrong here? Or what do you think of their sort of method of, we'll sign a cheap guy and hope that he works out?
For the most part, that is how it's been for them. I think that Freddie Anderson was probably the best guy they've had since then. He was a multi-time All-Star and played pretty well. And a lot of those times in the playoffs, it wasn't his fault. You can only do so much when your team scores one goal in a playoff game against Columbus Blue Jackets. So that's difficult. But when it comes to the goaltending, that's the thing. It was going to be hard unless they traded big assets to go out there and get Jacob Markstrom, to go out there and get a guy they can fully be confident in. And that's kind of the issue. They're still hoping in Joseph Woll. They do have Dennis Hill to be in the AHL, who I thought was actually one of the better goalies in the American League this year. I got to see him a lot. But I think that just from an overall standpoint, this is a group that you gotta hope one goalie sticks, and I don't know if either of them are. Look, Stolarz, he played behind one of the best defensive teams in the year and in the league, and he had his best season. But he's almost 30. He's been a career backup goalie. He was in the AHL not that long ago. Do I believe in him? No, I don't believe him as a starting goalie. But statistically, of all the goalies that were on the free agent market, he was the best. So at the very least, they went on and got the best one available, outside of Ilya Samsonov, who they were always going to move on from. But I don't know. I don't. That's the one position I still just don't feel totally confident in.
What about the OEL contract? Because obviously I saw it firsthand here, and he was in an impossible situation. That trade is, I still maintain this. I was actually arguing with someone in the YouTube comments on this channel recently about talking about how can you be so hard on Benning? It's like he got Garland and did these moves with Miller. I'm like, yeah, he did the worst trade in Canucks history. Garland's great. I'm glad we got him out of that. But considering we gave away a first and all this stuff, and we're in, the Canucks are in cap hell basically for the next, well, not cap hell, but they have that buyout with OEL now forever. My issue with OEL is I think it was a perfect role for him in Florida, where he could, he was on a very cheap contract and there wasn't much expected out of him. I think his role will obviously be increased. He's not going to be on the first pair. I would think probably second pair or third pair. How do you see him fitting in with the lineup?
Oh, that's difficult. I think with the Leafs, again, I don't expect him to play a ton. I'm looking at him probably if you're top pairing, if you're going for best available pairing, it's got to be Morgan Rielly and Chris Tanev, and then maybe you put OEL and Jake McCabe as that second pairing. And then you could have Benoit and Liljegren as your third, and then you've got a puck moving guy on all three lines, but you've got more of a shutdown guy on all three lines. So I do like what they've kind of built there defensively a bit more. I think OEL, given what they're paying him, they got a bit more term, they got his salary down, and it was either have him or just bring back TJ Brody. And I think that they went out there and got the guy they needed.
Yeah, much better than TJ Brody. Got to mention that though for sure. I guess I'm scarred from having OEL here and just thinking like, man, like the cap restraints and all these different things that sort of happen with that. Like he was a great locker room guy. He was, and to be fair, like when he came in, that was like the worst Canucks team ever. Like they had, obviously everything was going wrong that season. But I just wonder at 3.5, that might be a little rich because he basically signed the same term as Tanev. I mean, they're both, and they're only a year apart. I just wonder like how much you're going to get at OEL. But that's an interesting one. This Mitch Marner thing, will this be a distraction this season? Like, obviously, I'm guessing, and you kind of give your take on this as well, but if they don't re-sign him, like you can't just let him walk. Like, especially Tree Living went through all this with Johnny Gaudreau, right? Like, so what's sort of how do you think the Mitch Marner thing's going to unfold? I guess that would be the simple way of asking my question.
So if they trade him, there's no way they possibly get good value for him, and that's the thing that I've been kind of just pushing this whole time. It's like you got to really believe in trading him that you're going to be getting the best value, because it's not a guy you could easily replace, and you're not going to get the same value because it's pretty much impossible to trade a guy with that type of contract. I think with him, it's almost like you'd be better off actually just letting him go and just take that full cap space and just start fresh and see what you could do. But I guess, to me, it's still too early to make a good decision on that. I was always on team, do not trade him. You're getting a new coach. Let's see what he does with this new coach.
Yeah.
New coach that has notoriously not been kind to guys who don't put the full effort out there. If he thinks that he's not going out there and putting in the effort he needs to every single day, Berube's going to make sure that Marner knows it. And I think, you got to let this swing. Now, having Marner in, the last year of a contract like this with a new coach, like that's a lot of pressure for them to figure out things quick. But to me, trading him this summer, like you were just going to make your team worse. Like no question about it. So like, let's not forget that Marner at times has been the best playoff performer for the Leafs.
It's true. Yeah.
Like I feel like sometimes there's just everyone's looking for a new scapegoat. Now that Nylander's got that longer term contract, we kind of move him away, and you look at the guy who is slightly easier to move just based on that. But he's not going to waive his no move clause to just go anywhere just because we fans want him to. Like it's got to make sense for everybody involved, and like unless he's going to go out there and play for a contending team, which isn't going to pony up the price to go in and bring that almost $11 million player. It wasn't going to happen.
I love that insight, and that's something I didn't even think of, is that, Berube might get something out of him. And again, I hate to always bring this back to the Canucks, but obviously I'm obsessed with them and I follow them all the time. But like, you look at what Rick Tocchet did with JT Miller. Like there was talk that the Canucks, after signing that 8-year contract extension, was trying to trade JT Miller because they're like, he can't play defense. But Tocchet obviously, molded him, got the best out of him, and he became, obviously like now he's like a fan favorite, and he was a really good playoff performer for the team too. So maybe the same sort of thing happens with Marner. That'll be something to keep an eye on this season, and hopefully it's not too much of a distraction. Also got to quickly plug your article yesterday. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, on the Leafs prospects. Really good stuff over there on Daily Faceoff. Is there a name on that list that kind of jumped out that maybe people were surprised by? Like, I don't follow the Leafs enough to kind of know their pipeline, but is there a name that maybe you had some feedback on where people were like, oh, I didn't expect this guy to be this high, or anyone that sort of pops out on the list?
Honestly, a lot of people were like, whoa, Ryan Terberg, a guy that goes out there. He was my 8th ranked guy, a 22-year-old winger. And I think the thing about him was he went out there and just really impressed me this year. A guy that almost had close to like 50-ish points this year, on pace for 50 points, that he stayed healthy, for a player that was more of like a middle 6 guy in college, never really projected to be a big point producer, and he was a 7th round pick in 2020. Like, this is not a guy that came through and was overly impressive early on, but he's just a guy that I could see getting some NHL games next year because he fits kind of that perfect 4th line role. He works so hard. He's very good defensively, and he's not afraid to throw the body. Like, he's not a big guy. He's not a strong guy, but he doesn't shy away from the physical element of the game. And you put that together, and you got a guy who, if he can really prove he could be a consistent everyday performer, maybe he's a 4th line player. Maybe he becomes someone similar to Bobby McMahon, like where he was a guy that was way off of anyone's radar and just flew up all of a sudden. And now look at him. He's an everyday player for the Leafs. So we'll see what happens there.
And on that note, is there anyone in the prospect line like that could maybe step in this season that you think could potentially be like a dark horse or make an impact at training camp?
I really want to see what Topi Niemela could do because, a 22-year-old defenseman, I've been really high on him for a few years, and it just hasn't happened yet. He just came to the AHL last year. I was kind of hoping he'd play well enough to earn some NHL starts, and he didn't. I think that, a right-handed defenseman that moves the puck as well as he does, can run the power play and be as effective at both zones is good. It's just game-to-game consistency has been an issue for him. So we'll see if he takes that next step forward. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's pushing at camp and makes a good impression.
Kind of stepping back a bit, talking about Berube. Did you like the hire, or did you think there was someone else out there that might have been a better fit for the Leafs?
See, like looking back, I can't remember what other coaches were available, but with Berube, It was like I felt like he was overrated. And yeah, they won that Stanley Cup, great, but then they also like never made it out of the first round of the playoffs again after that run. So, and the team was still good. It wasn't like they went for a full rebuild. And yet now the team is a lot different than it was in 2019. But I think there was still a lot of talent that they just didn't get the most out of. So we'll see what happens. But I feel like sometimes guys who win Stanley Cups can be overvalued as coaches. It's like, oh, look what happened. It's like, well, Dan Bylsma went out there and won some cups of the won a cup of the Penguins, and then had to spend like half a decade in the AHL. Like this is sometimes it's just things click, some things work. Yeah, you got the roster that they just needed a new voice in the change room, and that's all it was. And we'll see what happens here. But Berube, like it's again a guy that seems like players really respect though.
Well, and it's kind of like a typical Leafs hire, like obviously has the reputation of winning the cup. And that season, and we got Billy in the chat. Billy, I will get to your questions later talking St. Louis Blues. But yeah, that was a weird season, right? Because wasn't St. Louis like near the bottom of the league and they went on some crazy run and then ended up winning the cup that year. So it was just a very not statistical Stanley Cup run that Berube had that year with St. Louis as well. So yeah, I'm curious to see how it works. And another thing with the Leafs coaches that I think people have to consider is the media, right? Like you have to be like, I remember like ages ago when Ron Wilson was hired and like, he was obviously like, biting back a little bit. Like it's that's something that comes with the territory of being with the Leafs. You think John Cooper's getting the same scrutiny from, the media in Tampa Bay that they're in Toronto. They're absolutely not. So it's just a different animal when you're playing in Toronto, but very curious to see how this all kind of pans out as well. One thing I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if you saw the article, but The Athletic had an article, I know technically, I guess a competitor, but they had an article on like front office confidence with teams, and I don't know if you saw Toronto was ranked 30th on the list. Did you happen to see it? And if you didn't, what are your thoughts on just them being so low? And what are your thoughts on the front office?
Oh, well, put it this way. Trey Living was not the guy that I thought made the most sense to be the hire last year, a guy that had a history of some poor contracts with the Calgary Flames, and like almost felt like just give somebody new a chance. Give Brendan Pridham, who was their cap crunch guy, their assistant GM, give him a real chance. But so I didn't love their GM. And then when you look at, who else is there, you're looking at Brendan Shanahan. He's got to probably be the next guy to go because it just hasn't worked. But at the same time, I think people calling for him to be fired like every year, I don't think they understand what a president for the team does. Mm-hmm. And most people won't, because it's like basically a position that only like the team really knows what that means in this situation here. But maybe they got to just go clean house there. They're probably not going to fire a GM after 2 years, but we'll see what kind of happens there. But actually I say that, but in NHL 24 I was fired after 2 seasons as a GM because they didn't understand I was in a rebuild. But that was stupid by the Arizona Coyotes. But anyways, yeah, like in terms of that, I understand it though. I think because it was a fan voted thing, but I know that people were not too thrilled about a team that just continues to find ways to fail in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's hard. And then you add in again, like the mecca of what Toronto is, like it's hard to just get ahead because they haven't been performing like the expectations of sort of expected. Like you think at this point they'd at least make it to, the conference finals or Stanley Cup finals. And it's just, it's tough. Like, but I still think it's the hardest trophy to win in sports. Like it's so unpredictable as far as, the optics and everything. So we've talked all about the Leafs. I did want to talk a little bit. We'll do maybe like another 5 minutes here. I know you have to take off at 12:30 Eastern. But what do you make of the offer sheets with the Oilers and the St. Louis Blues? I love this as someone who's not a big Oilers fan. I knew this would happen. Like I knew they would run into issues with their cap. So I guess first, just your reaction to the offer sheet, and then we'll talk about what you think might actually happen.
See, I love it because it's so hostile. And then, I wish we'd see more of this because it's fun. Now, if the Blues, I'm pretty sure Broberg's deal was like just over $4 million per season. If that contract goes through, sorry, St. Louis, that was not worth it. Like Broberg has not established himself as a full-time NHL player yet. Holloway, I think, actually could be one of the more underrated young forwards in the NHL because it's a guy that you see the skill, and I feel like he didn't really get a chance to showcase it in the role more of a bottom six guy at the Oilers. But he's a guy that I could see put up 25, 30 goals a year if you give him the right guys to play with. And those right guys aren't in St. Louis. Those right guys are in Edmonton. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But, hey, I love chaos, things like that. I remember when the Kakniemi thing happened a few years ago, and that was just that was entertainment. And then the way the Canadians addressed it was by picking up Christian Dvorak, who ended up just not doing anything for the team. To be fair, they probably are happy they didn't have that Kotkaniemi contract in the end, because he hasn't looked that good, but neither is Christian Dvorak.
I want to see more of these offer sheets. It just adds a little bit of chaos to the year. Like, I'm going to go all the way back. I remember when the Flyers offer sheeted Ryan Kessler back in the day, and the Canucks had to sign him. And Kessler ended up working out, but it's always funny to see. And what's another one I forgot that just recently came up was Shea Weber. Remember he got an offer sheet from
Flyers.
Philly?
Oh yeah. I remember where I was when I found that out. I was Dairy Queen, and I just remember thinking like, wow, what a contract. And then he's still technically under a different. And I think he's actually still under that contract technically.
Yes, and I think it's Tampa Bay or some team that still owns his rights, or Utah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those teams that has a lot of cap space. We're going to get to Troy's question only because he's obviously a big fan of Steven here. He says, hey, Steven, big fan of your work. What do you think about the Columbus Blue Jackets prospects, Fantilli, Jurasek, Johnson? What is your prediction for the point totals this season? Good stuff here from Troy.
Well, hey, Troy. And when it comes to Blue Jackets, I'm really high on their future. Is that going to be, am I high on them this year? Probably not. I still think they need to go out there and get an actual goaltender that they could feel confident in. And I don't think Tarasov is the long-term answer if Merzlikins isn't either. In terms of, those guys there, Fantilli, love him, full healthy season with him, and watching him potentially play with Gavin Brindley is going to be a lot of fun. I want to just see them use these young guys as much as humanly possible, because we saw that last year where it just did not seem like anytime one of those young guys made a mistake, they were penalized for it. And I didn't feel like that was the right development move for them. But I do believe in Juracek. I'd love Fantilli. I think Kent Johnson, just give him one year of just consistency in the NHL, and I think he's going to impress people. I love Gavin Brindley. The Blue Jackets truly have one of my favorite prospect pools this year, and a new GM. Let's see what happens.
And then he also asked about the Russian Marchenko and all these guys. Troy's like a hardcore Columbus fan. I love him coming in here because I don't follow the team enough. So anytime he brings up stuff, it's a good chance for me to kind of get brushed up on the team.
Well, see, I want to give a shout out just to the general the Blue Jackets fans. They rule. They're awesome. They love that team, especially when they haven't been so good for so long. When it comes to Marchenko, obviously a very good rookie season. Excited to see what he could do there. Voronkov, another one I think is maybe a bit undervalued by the average fan. And Chinikov, let's see what he could go do. And I know I didn't love that draft pick at the time, but the fact that they've got all these Russian guys who can become friends with each other and get to grow and learn off each other, it definitely makes it easier to transition to the NHL. And I think it makes it more attractive to trying to attract other quality talent from overseas too.
What did you make of them hiring Dean Evason, who obviously previously with Minnesota, and we know him here in Vancouver, he used to coach the Vancouver Giants.
I love both him and I love the Don Waddell hires. Waddell, get a guy who is a legitimate, very, very impressive GM, but then you go out and get a coach who probably shouldn't have been fired when he was. They needed a new voice from the Minnesota Wild. So Columbus really kind of looking really strong here.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I love Columbus. I love the fan base. They've just had some bad luck, with picks and other trades and things that just haven't worked out. But I'm really intrigued to see their progression going forward, and hopefully they can figure things out. And this Patrick Laine thing, we'll see if that ends up getting sorted out. But a lot of sort of things at play. Quickly, we got 3 more minutes. Just your overall thoughts on the offseason. Which teams impressed you with some of the moves they've made, and which were some teams that kind of disappointed you?
Well, see, I'm disappointed that I'll start with there. The New York Rangers, I think the one thing with them was it felt like they just needed to go and maybe get one more big piece. Go out there and get a Patrick Kane and go out there and get another scoring piece, and they didn't end up doing that. Obviously, the most improved for me has got to be the Nashville Predators, going out there against Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault and Brady Shea. To go out there and get that. The Predators last year, we wrote. One of our writers wrote that he thought the Nashville Predators were going to be the lowest scoring team in the NHL and was going to come dead last. I don't think anyone expected, Gustav Nyquist to just show up and have a career season, or Philip Forsberg to be a top 15 player in the NHL, and still have a chance to be, a playoff team despite their goaltending not looking as good as it probably could have been. If everything worked out for that team, maybe they would have gone a little farther in the playoffs. But with the moves they made this year, if Saros can be the guy and they get now a very good backup goalie in Scott Wedgwood, I think Nashville is going to not be a cup contender, but they're going to make a lot of teams nervous.
Yeah, I like Nashville a lot. I'm with you on the Rangers. Hey, Barclay Goodrow, I don't want to go to San Jose. Well, hey, we're going to put you on waivers and you're going to go there anyways. So that's how it works. Very, very interesting with Chris Drury. One disappointing team for me, Detroit. What's going on with Steve Yzerman? Why can't they get they got Cam Talbot? Like, why? I don't get the goaltending thing. And then some of their moves, obviously they got Tarasenko, right? I think that was one of their pickups. But outside of that, I really don't know what they're trying to do over there.
The Detroit Red Wings are a team that I feel like having Steve Yzerman return there is just going to hurt his legacy because the Yzer plan just hasn't really moved forward. Like, how long have we been talking about, actually making proper steps forward for this franchise? And it feels like it's not happening. Patrick Kane for one more year, great. Is he going to play like he did last year? We'll see. Tarasenko, his value is definitely very down. And then you look at just kind of these other guys here, like they still got to sign Lucas Raymond. They still got to sign Moritz Seider, two of their best players. I think that, it'll be interesting to see what Simon Edmondson could do after a year in the AHL, but I don't love their goaltending at all. You've got just a bunch of guys who've, Talbot was an NHL starting goalie for a bit, but three guys that really at this point are all backup goalies. I don't know. I don't see how this team's going to be competitive anytime soon.
You're always competitive when you come on here, Steven. Really appreciate it. We'll definitely get you back on throughout the season. I know we are going to be rolling out the show for the upcoming season. Anything you got coming up on Daily Faceoff or anything else you got going on, by all means, I'll give you the last word here, and then we'll continue on with the show.
Yeah, so I'm going to be off next week, but I've been working on my prospect pool breakdowns of every single team in the NHL, and I just got one more to write. That'll be coming out Tuesday. That'll be the Winnipeg Jets. And one other story I just published. I was in Edmonton for a week for the Hlinka Gretzky, the first tournament in the U18 draft year, all the top 20, 25, 26 talent. I just published a story with over 120 scouting reports on players. So if you want to watch the NHL draft, that is probably the most information you're going to find on one spot right away.
There we go. Stephen Ellis, everyone, go check him out on Daily Faceoff. Steve will be in touch, and maybe one of these days I'll get out to Toronto. My wife's from over there. We go there like once a year. Just hasn't worked out this year, but next time I'm out there, we'll definitely grab a drink or something. So
sounds good to me.
All right, take care, Stephen. Have a good one. That is Stephen Ellis of Daily Faceoff here on the program, a returning guest, our first returning guest. And like I was kind of alluding to you guys over there, the plan is to try and get someone on every week now to talk about the offseason with particular teams. We had Dave Hall on 2 weeks ago. That episode is our highest rated episode so far. Dave with some really good insight, both on the Canucks offseason and what's going on in the pipeline. So I'm thinking next week I have a guy, hopefully I have a guy that's going to talk about the Oilers, which we'll find out by then if they're able to get the offer sheets done with Broberg and Dylan Holloway. That's something I forgot to ask Stephen about, was how the Oilers are going to navigate through this. I don't know how they're going to navigate through it. We were talking about this in my Discord. We have a little hockey tab in there. You put Kane on LTIR, that's $5.1 million in cap space that they have available. So you could bring back Broberg, but you can't bring back Holloway as well. I'm with Steven. I'm not a big Philip Broberg guy. This was a guy that they were looking to trade last year. I think I get that defensemen or young defensemen are a hot commodity in the league, but it just hasn't worked out for him there. If I was a predicting man right now, so Billy, this kind of gets to maybe something you want to talk about here since you're a Blues fan. If I had to predict, I think Broberg's going to go to St. Louis. I think they'll keep Holloway, and I think they'll put Kane on LTIR. I know some people have talked about them trading Cody Ceci. I don't know who's going to take that contract. We'll have to see, but that would be my prediction right now. We're going to find out in 7 days. The Oilers have 7 days to match those contracts, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, keep the questions coming, everyone. I forgot to plug any of the content we have on this channel to start, but actually, first, let's get to our poll question. How do you think the Toronto Maple Leafs will finish this upcoming season? And right now, leading the way, looks like there's only one vote on the community tab here. Actually, no, I have to refresh it here. 1 second. Right now, wow, we actually have 17% of people saying that the Leafs will miss the playoffs. I don't think that'll happen. I think their goaltending's better. Although, like Steven mentioned, more, played in front of a good defensive team, and Stolarz, that is. We'll see if that ends up panning out. But yeah, 17%, but 75% out early in the playoffs. That's the way I voted. I just think they're the same team, like overall. Like getting Tanev and OEL will help. But is that going to be a difference maker? No, I think you got to trade one of the big three. But like Steven mentioned, if Craig Berube can get more to Mariner, maybe we see an even better Mariner out there. I just think you can't win like championships with like, I think there was like an article on The Athletic about this, about teams that have like so much cap space allocated to like a couple players. It's going to be tough. Edmonton's going to run into that problem, right? If they keep Draisaitl, because basically you'll have McDavid, Nurse, and Draisaitl all tied up really heavily. And Nurse is obviously the one out there that has not really lived up to that contract. So we'll see what happens there. But let's get to some videos on the channel here quickly. We got, speaking of Chris Tanev, Again, this is why you got to subscribe to Fanatics Views, guys. We don't just have one team. This is for the Leafs. Chris Tanev. It looks like this is an older clip talking about his Mount Rushmore. See, I love these evergreen clips that we got. Robert Thomas. And shout out to my guy Taylor. Not a big fan of this screen grab there of my... looks like I'm trying to sing or something, but clipping out some of the talking points from the podcast, which is great. And you can see they're doing decent numbers here, which is awesome. So yeah, I think that's that. Shout out to my guy Taylor for doing that, because I like getting the individual topics that we cover in here, because obviously the show's an hour, so there's a lot that we can kind of get into. But yeah, you can see a lot of stuff for the off season. Again, not a ton going on in hockey right now, but that's why we're doing the show, is to keep the ball rolling, so to speak. What else? Let's get to your questions. How do you think the Blues look going into next season? Let's look at Puckpedia, as we got to do. No more cap friendly, obviously. Thank you, Washington Capitals. I meant that in a sarcastic way. Let's have a look at St. Louis's roster right now. Are most of their... Oh, they got they got $7 million in cap space right now. Now, do they have to sign any players here? Do they have any RFAs? I'm trying to remember here. Full roster breakdown, so it's a little bit different. Looks like they're good. By the way, I like that Robert Thomas contract. That's going to age quite well. That might be one of their better contracts. Yeah, right now it looks like everyone's kind of signed in there, so they could make some moves. I did see they did a swap with the draft picks the other day. But well, actually, yeah, I guess they're like with the cap space that'll go towards signing the Holloway and Broberg if they're able to get him. So, look, I'll be completely honest, Billy. Like, I kind of like St. Louis in terms of like, you know, they're never a team that like annoyed me or whatever, and I thought it was cool when they won the Cup in 2019 because they had never won. That was always a team when I was a kid that would like get far and then never win at all. So I'm kind of, you know, I thought that was cool when they won the Cup there, but I don't know, like I feel like they're kind of doing what the Canucks were doing a couple of years ago, which is like they probably should do a rebuild, but they're not doing one. Now Canucks have more core pieces here, but yeah, like if you can get off some of these contracts, I think this could be a make or break season for them. Like I think if they struggle out of the gate or there's some issues, maybe they start looking into a full rebuild, because like I don't think this is a playoff team right now with what they have. I think you look at all the teams in the Western Conference. We talked about Nashville; they've gotten a lot better. Vegas is always good. You've got Dallas, Canucks. You know they made some good moves in the offseason, as I mentioned last week with Dave Hall or 2 weeks ago. So we'll see, but I am rooting for them. I hope they do well because they're a fun team to watch. So we'll see how things pan out there. I don't know if I really answered your question there. I would love to hop in an episode, talk Columbus. Hey, you know what? I'll gladly have you on. Honestly, I don't even know a Columbus Blue Jacket. Like Aaron Portzline's the only guy I know that covers the Blue Jackets, and I don't have any way of getting a hold of him. So Troy, if you want on, I think next week we'll do Edmonton. Maybe week after. So I'll just DM me on Twitter maybe in 2 weeks, and I'll try and make a note of. Actually, you know what? I'll just make a note of it now. Power of Google Notes on my computer keeps track of everything. Or maybe next week if I can't get the Oilers guest on, maybe I can get you on there. I just want to get people on that know their teams really well. Like we had Andrew Stein on for the Senators, Dave Hall for the Canucks. Obviously, Stephen Ellis knows the Leafs really well. I want to try and get as many teams as we can as we're leading into the season. And nothing's like formulaic. Like it would be cool to get all the Canadian teams, but like I don't even know someone that covers like the Montreal Canadiens. So you guys got to remember, I'm an MMA guy entering in the hockey space, so I don't have a lot of contacts, but I do have a few people that here and there that I could bring on as well. The Atlantic Division has a lot of teams that have potential to make the playoff push. I can see the Leafs wild card spot are just missing. That's true. Yeah, let's look at that Atlantic Division. Let's look at the NHL standings from last year. So yeah, the Atlantic, who do you got? You got the Panthers, Bruins. So only 4 of the teams make it. So you got Panthers, Bruins, Leafs, Lightning. Here's the problem though. Let's go look at the division right now. Like Boston, you guys know my feeling on this. I think Lindholm's not going to work out as people think in Boston. I don't think he'll be bad, but I just don't think he'll be this first line center that people expect him to be. Panthers are still going to be good. They really haven't made too many changes. Lightning get Jake Getzel. They'll probably be better. The Leafs, I think these two will swap, but like Detroit, like I was just mentioning, they didn't really do anything in the offseason. The Sabres, yeah, they got rid of Jeff Skinner, but what have they done with that cap space? Next to nothing. The Senators traded Jacob Chikrin. Like they're still in a rebuild mode, unfortunately. They have Allmark. I suppose they have a shot at the playoffs, like Andrew Stein and I were talking, although even he thinks that the Sens probably won't make the playoffs, but unless Allmark can go on some heater, maybe they make it, and then the Canadians won't make it. So I think the Leafs are probably making it. They're going to be in the bottom end there, obviously, but I think they're still going to make the playoffs here overall. Even like the Islanders, like if they got better, not really. The Capitals will probably be better because they got Pierre-Luc Dubois. Rangers and Hurricanes are about the same. So yeah, I mean, I don't see, like, to me, it would have to be a team that's made a lot of push. Like the Devils here, they're going to be better. They'll probably make the playoffs. If anything, I would go Devils over Islanders making the playoffs this year. Just because they got Markstrom. That's always been their Achilles heel. I was talking about the Leafs not having a good goaltender since Ed Belfour. How about the Devils not really having a good goaltender since Martin Brodeur? So now they've got one in Markstrom, and I can tell you guys firsthand, unless he gets injured, Markstrom's going to work out really well in New Jersey. What are the top 5 teams you most likely will think will win the Cup? Ooh, interesting. I'm going to go with Dallas. Got to go with Edmonton because they were close last year and pretty much same team. If anything, Edmonton got better with Arvidsson and Jeff Skinner. So those are 2. The Knights got worse. I mean, they lost some pieces in the offseason, like Marchessault and Chandler. Or, who's it? Marchessault and who's the other guy? Chandler Stevenson. Who's the one who went to Seattle? Is Chandler Stevenson? Yeah, that's right. And I always think their goaltending's iffy. Like Aiden Hill, I know he won a cup, but I'm still not like completely sold. So yeah, we'll go Edmonton, Dallas, Winnipeg. I don't know with Winnipeg. Colorado, you got to put in the mix too. So okay, let's go here. Let me just write this down because it's easier than me just trying to play word. Okay, so Edmonton, Dallas. I'll go Florida, obviously. So 2 more. I don't know about Carolina. Like they can never seem to put it together. And again, Carolina didn't do much in this offseason either. It gives me confidence. I'll put the range. Well, yeah, I'll put the Rangers. You have to, because they're right up there. So you need one more team here. I don't know about the Bruins. And Tampa Bay, I don't like even getting Getzel. Is that going to be the difference with them winning the Cup? I don't think so. They lost Stamkos too. So it's like, while they gained Getzel, who's a lot better, they still lost Stamkos. They're still, and obviously they got McDonough back too. I don't know if I picked Tampa to win the Cup. What's the last team here? I would love to go with my Canucks, but I don't want to come across super biased. But I do think the Canucks have a shot because they have the goaltending and, like, you know, again, they don't have that Besser injury. You never know. I don't see Vegas. No, I'm not going to go Vegas. I'm going to go Colorado. I know that might not be popular, but yeah. So we'll go with that. So just to reiterate, my Cup favorites: Edmonton, Dallas, Florida, Rangers, Colorado. I think that makes sense. Whoops, as we're still on the show page. Didn't mean to do that. What changes do Dallas need to make? For my impression, they should have won the Cup last year and they underperformed. I just think they need, you know, it's weird. Like, they get Tanev, and yet I thought they didn't play Edmonton very physical. Like, I don't know if DeBoer's got to change some strategy or whatever. Like, they've got a good team. Like, and again, a lot of those guys that stepped up for them, those are younger guys that are going to continue to get better. So they lose Tanev. They didn't really get anyone in the offseason, right? Let me just double check. Who did the Stars get? They got Casey DeSmith, which, no, that's not a difference maker. Colin Blackwell, Matt Dumba. So Dumba's basically replacing Tanev. He's like not a good version of Tanev. They got Ilya Lyubushkin. Yeah, I don't know. And then remember, they lost Pavelski, Suter. Suter wasn't doing anything. That's why they got rid of him, and Tanev. Yeah, I don't know. And what's the Stars cap situation? They've got $6 million in cap space. Did they have everyone sign though, or I think they have a couple RFAs. Let me just double check this. Thomas Harley, they got to sign, so that'll take up some cap space. But still, they'll have some cap space by the looks of it. So yeah, I don't know. By the way, Jake Ottinger's up next year, RFA. Ooh, he's only at $4 million this year. He's going to get a big raise. So yeah, I don't know. They need a couple more pieces though for me to be super confident. But you're right. Like, I thought Dallas was going to win last year too, and they just they lost steam against Edmonton, and Edmonton took over. Hopefully, Lane is traded by them, so we have some new to discuss as well. I'm so excited. No. Hey, I'm thankful for. Hey, listen, let me tell you, Troy. I'm thankful for you for supporting me, like obviously on the MMA side for a while, but also on this endeavor as well, because I didn't know who would come over and cares that much about hockey. So the fact that I even get to do a hockey show, guys, is just so cool to me. Like, hockey was my first love. It's always going to be my first love, and that's super awesome. So sad they got rid of Jeff Merrick. I guess we haven't talked about that because now we know what came out. So Jeff Merrick gets let go from Sportsnet because he texted the draft order to a friend of his privately, and because it's Nevada and they're worried about gambling stuff, Sportsnet felt that they needed to fire him, which I think is kind of lame. You're letting a guy go after that many years. Like, I think Sportsnet should have had his back and tried to make it work. And as far as I know, and I might be wrong about this, let me find the article. I don't think the guy publicly tweeted anything out. So if he didn't publicly, and here's the other thing, guys, with betting, you can't bet on draft picks within 24 hours. Okay, so we're going to check this right now. I did read the article, but I can't remember if the guy that he texted posted things publicly or not. Let's see. So yeah, Sportsnet and Nevada didn't go in there. Let's see. I hate when they write these long-winded articles. Just tell me the meat of it. Okay, so here we go. I'll just show you the article. Sorry, athletic people, if you're upset that I'm going behind a paywall and showing the article here, but it's been out for a while. As part of the Sportsnet crew that night, Merrick was privy to the draft selections before they were publicly announced. This is common practice for rights holders. They're notified. I can verify this, by the way. When I worked at TSN ages ago, like, we knew the draft order and stuff before everyone else. Like, I remember working on the draft one night and you would see it on the screen, like on the raw feed that the public didn't get to see. So that's 100% true. So graphics can be prepared and video clips rendered. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Also, under the sphere that evening working the draft was Mark Seidel. Hope I'm saying that right. Former scout with the Minnesota Wild. Has worked as scouting, personal roles for the Ontario Hockey League's Barrie Colts. He also runs a scouting service, blah, blah, blah. Known each other for years. According to two people, knowledge of their relationship, Seidel has made multiple appearances on podcasts. Okay. In Las Vegas, Seidel correctly predicted several picks on X, which prompted concerns that Merrick is... Okay, so he did post it publicly. So the league was concerned about potential misuse or dissemination of insider information. So here's the problem with this. And I don't mean the problem with Merrick, but I mean the problem with, like, this type of thing. This happens everywhere. Like, the NBA does this, like Woj and Shams and those guys, they break stuff before like draft order before everyone else. You look at even in hockey, Frank Saravelli, who we just had Steven on, like one of his bosses or lead guys there, Frank Saravelli, basically revealed the expansion draft order for Seattle. I think the issue is that obviously gambling's become a big thing now. Nevada Gaming got involved in this and I guess got wind of it. I wonder how, I guess people just put two and two together and they're like, Merrick was leaking this information. But here's the thing, you can't even bet on the draft like the night of the draft. So what's the big deal? I think this whole thing's silly. I think Sportsnet should add his back. I hope TSN picks up Merrick. I love listening to Merrick. We get his show here on the West Coast, like after our like morning show. So I used to listen to him in the car if I happen to be in the car like past 9 o'clock. And I think he does a good job. So I hope TSN picks him up, or I hope at the very least he's back doing some sort of radio or something, because he's good. He's really good. So yeah, that's to me, that was silly, the whole Merrick thing. So there we go. Still be cool if Jesse Finnick could link you up with Chris. Oh, Jesse Finnick can link me up with Chris Pronger. Yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll ask him about that. We could just get Chris Pronger on the show. See if I could work that out. That'd be cool. What else? Let's see. Let's see what we got here as far as other stuff. Tampa also lost Sergachev. That's right. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, getting Getzel's great though. Like, Getzel's like a guaranteed going to work out player. Like, he's fantastic. But then they also lost Stamkos, who, granted, you're not getting the old Stamkos, but that's still got to hurt a little bit. Rooting for the Jets to win. Yeah, we'll see. Who did the Jets end up? Winnipeg Jets head coach Scarter O'Neill. That's right. Who, if you remember, Troy did not work out in Columbus years ago. So interesting they went with him. But yeah, Jets are always going to be a threat. They've got the goaltending with Hellebuck, got some good forwards. They absolutely won that trade with LA, getting Verardi and whoever else in that trade with Pierre-Luc Dubois. So we'll see how the Jets do, but it's going to be an interesting season. By the way, I mentioned this before, guys. If you guys are in the chat here, I'm going to run a really cool hockey pool this year that hopefully you guys can get involved with, anyone here in the chat. But It's the one that my friend does, but we're going to do the same format. It's the one where you have to pick a player from every team. So if you guys are interested, closer to the season, well, I'll definitely get more information on that. But it would be like a live draft. Like it would take like an hour or two. Just warning you guys. And I would only recommend people who like follow hockey extensively. Like Troy, you'd probably be fine with this. But it's like a really fun pool to do. And my friend does it every year. We've been doing it for like 10, 15 years. But I want to do it myself because I think the format's so cool. Basically, what you do is if I pick. Let's say, you do the draft order. It's like 1 to 10. Let's say you get first pick. Okay. I'm going to go to Edmonton. I'm going to pick Connor McDavid. Okay, cool. Your draft order number 2. Okay. I'm going to take Leon Draisaitl. Like you can't take another player that's been taken. And so where it gets interesting is, let's say you pick like a bad team. Like let's say you pick like Buffalo and you're like, oh, I'm going to take, I don't know, like Owen Power or something. I don't know, like someone that's like good on the Sabres. The person who has pick 10 on that team, you're going to get someone really bad that's probably not going to score. So that's where it gets really interesting. We do goals and assists and stuff. So if you're interested in that, we'll talk closer to the season. Can you explain what cap space is? So basically, like cap space is, well, I'll show you. I'll give you a good like visual example here. So if we look at, say, Edmonton as an example, so the salary cap basically has, so how the salary cap works is like there's a certain, the cap is at a certain amount. What is here? Hold on, let me just find out. NHL cap ceiling. Okay, so the NHL cap is currently at 88 million. So the Edmonton Oilers are over that at 95 million right now. So basically, you have to be under the cap once the season starts. And there's all this other weird stuff that I don't really know, and that's obviously why I'm doing this, and I'm not a mathematician, but there's all this other weird stuff of like you have to allocate a certain amount of cap space throughout the year. Anyways, long story short is the Oilers are over the cap at 7 million. They can put, actually, they're over the cap now at 7 million. Let me look at their full roster breakdown. Why are they over? I think because they need to put Kane on IR. So Kane's 5.1, so that'll relieve some cap space there. But yeah, it looks like they're going to need, because they have Broberg. I see they have Broberg and I see the issue. So they've added the offer sheet that St. Louis made to their cap. That's why they're over the cap. So right now they can't afford Broberg and Holloway. They have to figure something out, whether it's putting Kane on LTIR or whatever. So they have $88 million in cap space. You can't go over the cap. You have to be under the cap. So this is what happened to the Canucks this offseason. Like, for example, Nikita Zadorov, he wanted to stay in Vancouver, but he wanted like a big contract. And the Canucks are like, hey, we've already got like 2 left shot defensemen that are like better than you, unfortunately, in Quinn Hughes and Carson Soucy. So it's like, we're not going to pay a third pair defenseman $5 million, which is what he ended up getting in Boston. So he had to go, but he didn't want to leave, but the Canucks had to do that because that's a better use of cap space. You don't spend the $5 million on Zadorov. You use that money on getting, Forbert and getting Kiefer Sherwood and, Denton Heinen and these other guys. You can get 3 players for the price of 1. So that's where like the cap thing is a really interesting part of the league. And I know some people hate it because like you end up seeing, players having to leave, but I like it too because then it's like, it's like a chess part of the sport. Like you have to manage the cap properly. So there we go. You kind of got me into hockey along with the guys in the Discord. Really looking forward to the season. I am as well. I can't wait for the season. I'm into hockey as ever been. Such a bad move, letting go of Jeff. Frank Saravalli literally tweeted Beckett. Snecki was going number 2 hours before it happened. Insiders are supposed to get this info, so it seems silly to me to punish them. I think the only reason that they did it was because Nevada was involved and there's all this gambling stuff going on. So they were worried about that. I think if the draft was in Minnesota or in Winnipeg or in, I don't know, like some market that's like not like the hub of gambling, I think he's still a sportsman. I don't think people care. But because it was in Nevada, and Nevada's very like strict when it comes to like illegal betting and all this stuff, even though, like I said, you cannot bet on a draft pick like that. You can only bet the day before. You can't bet the day of. They're worried. They're like freaking out, and then Sportsnet just folded like a sack of cards there, right? So that's why I think they let him go, which is silly. But like I said, if you've been with a company as long as Merrick has, you step up, you defend him, you say, hey, look, just deal with it internally. But getting rid of him, like that's a huge loss for them. I completely agree with you, Nick. Seems like they did an investigation. They didn't even bet who Jeff Merrick gave the guy. Just frustrated because I loved his show and 32 Thoughts, no other real podcast I enjoyed. Well, 32 Thoughts, yeah, I don't know what they'll do with that because obviously, like, who's going to co-host with Friedman? I'm trying to even think who could like do that now. Like, who's a radio hockey guy that they have that could do that as well? Like, you can't do Kyprios. That doesn't really fit. with what Kyprios does. You need like a buttoned up, like professional guy like Merrick is. Like Merrick's not a controversial guy. You need like a. Do they maybe do like a Justin Bourne, who's Kyprios' co-host? Does he do it? He's a bit plugged in. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. It's going to be interesting. So if selfishly want Merrick on ESPN to help grow the game in the U.S., I'd be fine with that too, although we'd get less of them here because we don't get ESPN. So there we go. Let's see what we got here. Da, da, da. Keep the questions coming, everyone. What else is going on in the news right now? Sorry, as you know, I cannot. Follow my other live streams. You know that I cannot multitask right now. Let's see some NHL news that's going on. So obviously the C announced with there as well. Edmonton Journal. The Oilers have a trump card to play against the St. Louis Blues. What's the trump card? Oh, the probably Kane going on LTIR. So that'll be interesting. What else? What else is going on? Let's just go to NHL.com. By the way, go check out Stephen Ellis's prospect projections if you guys want to do that. So here's what's going on NHL.com to give you guys an idea of what's going on in the league right now. Yeah, the Blues offer sheet. Like I said, my prediction is Holloway stays, Broberg goes. We had a small yesterday. Cody Glass getting traded to the Penguins. Cody Glass, a top NHL pick who hasn't really panned out, right? Wasn't he a Vegas draft pick? Could be wrong. He is 25. He is a center, and he's now been with 3 teams. So, yeah, interesting. What was he taking? 6th overall in 2017. I think that was the same draft year as Quinn Hughes, no? No, that was the Nick Suzuki year. This was the year I think the Canucks had a pick and they traded it. If I'm not mistaken. Anyways, what else? Yeah, not a whole lot going on. Let's get a few more questions, guys. We could probably get out of here a little bit early. I will be back next week. We will be doing the show every week. I just missed last week because I just happened to be on vacation during the week, but I will be here every week for you guys. There we go. Chris Johnson just said that it seems most likely for Lonnie to have to play his way out of Columbus Blue Jackets. He's averaged almost a point per game for his entire time in Columbus. I think he's probably going to erupt. Yeah, I mean, well, here's the problem too with Lonnie. He's been on a couple teams now, right? Like he was on Winnipeg, right? And then wanted to trade to Columbus. And then, like I said, it's, I think they were talking about this on the radio. Like you could do a trade where you retain salary and that might be able to work out. But there's teams don't have a lot of cap space. Like even if you took half that contract, even if you're paying Line A $4 million a season, there's just not a lot of teams that have any sort of cap space that sort of justify that as well. So it'll be interesting. Let's see what else. Lonnie has always been excellent for us, but he just has not been available. That too, injury issues and other stuff outside the cage, or it's outside the cage. You can tell an MMA guy when I'm saying cage. Yeah, 117 points, 129 games for Columbus. So less than a point per game. But like you said, dealing with a lot of stuff, injuries and all that. Hopefully it all works out. Who knows? With a new coach, like we were talking about Craig Berube with Mitch Marner, maybe Dean Evanson can get more out of Goudreau. And I love that Goudreau. Oh, yeah, the other name we talked about before is you guys got Sean Monahan. I love that. Maybe getting Monahan and Goudreau back together. That would be cool. And then, yeah, Line A, if he can bounce back, we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. So let's get a few more questions here, guys. Then we'll take off a little bit early. Again, appreciate you guys tuning into the Fanatics View Hockey Show. My name is James Lynch. Yeah, I think next week we'll try and do Edmonton as one of the teams, and then maybe after that we'll do Columbus. But if we don't do Edmonton next week, maybe I'll get you on to talk Columbus, Troy. Love talking with people that know their teams. Like I know Canucks inside and out. That's all every day I'm looking up Canucks news, even in the off season. Like I'm the guy that I would rather like listen on the radio to something to do with the Canucks this season than hear about baseball. Like that's actually one thing that really annoys me right now. Our local sports station here in Vancouver, they're streaming Jays games in the afternoon. It's like switch. Do not care about the Jays. Jays aren't even a playoff team. And listen, like not everyone in Vancouver wants to root for the Jays. Like I'm a Mariners fan anyways. At the very least, I'd rather hear Mariners games than Jays games. But I guess Mariners games would be on in the evening, not in the afternoon like it is in Toronto because of the time change. But like they even have like a Jays talk show on at 9 in place of Merrick's show, like for the summer, right? So they're talking about the Jays, and I have no interest. Like, baseball is just not my thing. Give me NHL preseason hockey over any sport for the most part. Well, you'll be doing a show during the regular season. Yeah, that's the plan until Taylor tells me I can't do it. But yeah, we're going to keep doing it. So I'll tell you guys this, and big shout out to you guys, especially your regulars, Troy, and everyone else that's in here. I got a nice compliment from the boss the other day. He really liked the last show, and obviously the numbers did well. I'm hoping we'll get more of that going forward. And, even with the clips, like if all that works out, we're going to be in business. But yeah, that's the plan. And then, maybe even go cover a couple Canucks games this year. That would be fun too. Just getting in the media room and doing some media work there. We'll see. There's a lot of potential with the show, but I think the key is getting more guests on, me being more established in the hockey side of things. And because I love doing this. This isn't work for me. This is stuff I like. You should see I could show you guys my phone and see some of the text messages. Like, I talk hockey all the time with my friends, any sort of news, like even the offer sheets yesterday. I was talking to a buddy of mine about that. So there we go. But yes, I will be doing the show during the regular season, and I will be getting more guests on, and we'll be doing a bit of everything there. So that totally makes sense. All right, guys, I think good time to end the show. Yeah, let me know any questions or anything that you missed if you're watching the replay of this or you want to come back to this and discuss later. I'll try and check the comments on this as best I can. Next week, same time, 12 Eastern. It might be 12:10. This week I was able to get away with it because I got my wife to take my kid at the proper time to camp. So I was able to start right at noon Eastern, but we'll try probably 12:10 next week. But just look on Twitter. You'll see what I'm posting there. So again, one more time, guys, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. This is the Fanatics View Hockey Show. I'll be back next week. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.